totaal een marketinggoeroe is. Hij heeft het boek geschreven. Het is niet bedoeld als verkooppraatje. Het is meer bedoeld als illustratie voor wat hij zal vertellen. Dat valt allemaal bij elkaar bij Mr. Brent Green, dames en heren.
It was a hot summer day in 1957, and not much was going on in the little town of Walton. However, the church was having a picnic, and there were dogs and kids running every place. Eventually, a pickup truck drove up full of teenage boys. The boys hopped out of the pickup, went up on something like a makeshift stage, and one of them pulled out a guitar, and they started playing the very popular rock and roll music of that time. Now, quite honestly, what does that have to do with marketing today? Well, one of the world's largest financial services companies has it figured out. Take a look at this. The key is never stop doing what you love. This isn't about the past or the 60s. This is about the future. Was it just the Beatles? Was it just that? Well, this is the first TV generation that had television as a wide national and international medium, so culture came across the Atlantic and it went back. Whatever part of this generation you talk about, the one thing you can conclude is it is a very transformative generation. What do I mean by this? Well, first of all, when they were little infants, there were almost 4 of them per family. That means moms had a lot of mouths to feed. They needed a lot of food, so an unknown brand at that time became Gerber's. Now, what is going to be the power brand next? If I could tell you, I would be investing everything I had in that stock. But I can tell you what the theme is going to be. The theme is going to be freedom. How do we understand and market to a generation? Well, the way we do that is by looking at values, what people care about. So I'm going to give you a 3-part model to help you understand any generation, including your own generation if you don't happen to be a baby boomer. Well, duh. I mean, obviously, but is that enough to call a group of people a generation? No. There are what is called generational drivers to help generations form their own identity. The first is intergenerational continuity. Now, that's a fancy way of saying we learn some of our core values from our parents. How many people in the room personally was involved in World War II? I don't see anybody. How many people in the room know about World War II? Please show your hands. Gosh, I think everybody put their hands up, almost. This is the important thing for marketing. Collective values and attitudes lead to collective action. And collective action has a continuing process through life. In other words, these values become very important. And when you grow up in a time where there's a lot of turmoil, something else happens.
People try to put us to down. Talking about my generation.
And so it ends with Bobby Kennedy, the brother of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, holding up the peace sign 5 minutes before he's assassinated. Now just think what that would do to a generation if that happened today. I want everybody to hold their thumb up. Everybody holds their thumb up, okay? And I want you to cover the earth with your thumb. I want to see all the thumbs up out there. Full audience participation. You just covered up Holland. You covered up the Atlantic Ocean. You covered up the United States. You covered up your grandparents, your great-grandparents. You've covered up your children, your grandchildren, and generations to come. You've just covered up everything that we know and have ever known as a species. That happened for the first time 40 years ago, this coming Christmas Eve. Frank Borman, the commander of Apollo 8, the first ship to leave gravity of the Earth and circle the moon. They didn't land until 1969, but he saw this photograph and he covered up the Earth with his thumb. And that was the first time a human being ever did that. And that changed everything about our consciousness as a society. That is considered the most important environmental photograph ever taken. Now, let me give you an example. If I had to pick one song from the 60s and 70s that represented your opportunity with the adults 50 plus, particularly the baby boomers, I would pick this song that I'm going to play. But I'm going to show you that song being played through the evolution of technology. Watch. So I'm going to bring in a famous baby boomer from the United States to explain this next concept, because, you know, I explained the research of how Generation Jones is so different right now than the leading edge. Well, here's why, because this is the shape of happiness, ladies and gentlemen. It fits nicely right around Bill Clinton's nose.
Let all the dreamers wake the nation.
So we have to talk about the present and the current stage of life that baby boomers are in. I don't know if you're familiar with Abraham Maslow. He was one of the founders of humanistic psychology, and he developed a model of need development. When we're little babies, we just need to be fed and given water. Our physiological needs become important. When we're young adults into middle age, esteem becomes our developmental priority, and that is being accepted by a peer group, being accepted within a profession, becoming known, becoming respected. If you manage to achieve all of these developmental needs, the last need is self-actualization. And what Maslow meant by that, it's not just about becoming somebody, it is a focus on being somebody. What is it that would prevent us from being successful at marketing to baby boomers or anybody over 50, particularly people in the media? Well, in a word, ageism. It's the fearsome thought of growing old. We as human beings are almost hardwired to fear, at some level, our own aging. So that means that you can have stereotypes and not be even aware of them, even though you say, I don't dislike those kind of people. They can still operate powerfully. And let me challenge you this. Do you have stereotypes? 80% of the population in both the United States and in Europe have some kind of built-in bias preferring young people to old people. That includes people over 65, and that includes me. Oh, let me count the ways. Here's a potato chip company.
Lay's potato chips, naturally irresistible.
Now, I have to admit, it's worth a chuckle. I'm not Mr. PC here. But the point is, what do the old people look like? They're silly. They're childlike. They're dependent upon their younger adult child for everything, and they're greedy. Sound like stereotypes? Sure does to me. Now, that deals with a lot of important lifestyle themes. Now, one could say that it's a little bit stereotypical because it suggests that the baby boomer typically is going to disinherit their children so they can have that one last LSD mind-expanding trip around the earth. Now, if you'd have taken the same ad and said, whatever your dreams, large or small, isn't this the time to go for them? Same commercial, loses the stereotype. Maybe not quite as funny. I want you to think of your dad right now. Think of Dad. He's going to talk to you for a second. Take me fishing like I used to take you. Take me fishing, we'll give the fish a good laugh. Take me fishing because it's easier to talk on the boat. Take me fishing because I miss my boy. Now that is a brilliant campaign in print. If you do not have a strong environmental, bio-friendly policy for your company, it used to be a way of differentiated product like GE has done. It's going to be mainstream, and you absolutely have to have an environmental approach to reach this generation. Sung by Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, written by Joni Mitchell. It was the theme song for Woodstock, and it's back to the garden time in a big way. I think you already know this. Organic products grew by 20% per year, every year for the last 7 years. The next trend I would like to share is generativity. It's a coined word. Let me let my friend Stephanie, who's 24 years old, and her baby boomer father show you what generativity is. This is an active generation. It is not disconnecting. It is staying active, and you need to show them that way. In 2015, people over the 50 will have a combined net worth of 17,670 billion euros. That is the gross national product of the United States and the Eurozone combined for 1 year. That's a lot of money. But let me leave you with this one thought. If that wasn't a good enough reason to be effective at marketing to people 50 plus, then maybe the good reason to do it is because, you know what? That's what we all have in common. Everybody in this room, if you're lucky, is going to be over 50, 60, and 70. And I think when you get to that stage of life, you're going to be wanted to be marketed to by smart people doing great marketing, selling outstanding products and services for this reason.
And the seasons, they go round and round, and the painted ponies go up and down.
What would you say to their bosses then?
I would say, boss, focus on 18 to 49. It's an important market. But we're absolutely crazy if we forget about the 50 plus. That's where the money is, and these baby boomers have been marketed to since they were this big. They had hula hoops, they had silly putty, they had slinkies. They're going to be buying big toys worth lots of money, and to forget that, we're going to be at a competitive disadvantage.
Mr. Green, it was a privilege. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.